and then I could hear you guys, but you couldn't hear me. So
No, you were
anyway,
frozen.
Yeah.
okay,
Oh,
yeah, I'm back.
there you go. And now I see the question on comments. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, all right.
Yeah. Oh, man, I should have gotten that in there. There was Chase Cole's comment.
Eject. He's at the
Nice.
90.
Yeah, yeah,
90
Yeah,
degree.
because as soon
uh,
as you froze, you did. You went 90 degrees. Your picture.
yeah.
It's like I don't know. That was crazy.
Okay, so should I just go into the so there I was?
Um,
You want to?
Let me try it again. That way I
Okay,
can cut off the
cool.
front end of this
Okay,
on YouTube and stuff like that. So um, let's. I'm going to go into audio hijack and kill everything. Delete these. Move them to the trash. All right, here we go.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
so there I was over Ramadi, Iraq, underneath the cloud deck at night, flying around with my lights off, about to head to the tanker when a call came in from C2, that's command and control. There is a tick in Mosul. And I thought, all right, game on.
That's
That
how
sounds
all
terrifying.
great aviation stories start. That's a much better way to go.
Yeah, that's just terrifying. Don't you know flying at night with your lights off is dangerous?
What in the wild, wild
Yeah.
world of sports?
Well, I
it's
was
just hard.
doing the even funnier part is I was a MOTS instructor at the time overseas to help out 211. And I was doing exactly what MOTS tells everybody not to do, which is fly underneath the cloud deck. But good way to get shot down. But I figured since it was nighttime, it would be okay. And
Be just fine. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
greetings, everyone. Repeat here, coming to you from Belgium today, and I'm talking with my with our special guest and my co-host Fig, who ran into our special guest week and a half ago in a very funny way. Fig, where are you today? And then
Well,
get
I'm
into
in
that.
I'm in Kearney, Missouri, which is just outside Kansas City, and it's kind of pretty much God's country here in Missouri. If you're going to live in Missouri, but yes, our special guest Fister and I worked together a week and a half or so ago, and lo and behold, here we are.
There you
And
go.
when I say work
Fister,
together,
you had an interesting perspective on this. Tell us about that. How'd that go?
Yeah,
How'd you
yeah.
wind
First of
up
all,
here?
guys, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the show. Like I was telling Fig, I don't think I'm really worthy after hearing some of the stories from guys like Captain Williams and Tammy Joe and Vapor. I feel a little bit inadequate, just your average Joe Harrier pilot from the War on Terror. But anyway, I was in at recurrent training, which for those that don't know is kind of like your annual NATOPS check at an airline. And Fig and I are at the same airline. So we're sitting there waiting for the instructor to come in, and Fig walks in, and we start talking about backgrounds, and he finds out I was a Harrier guy. He finds out I was a West Coast guy, so he makes fun of me for not knowing how to do VSTOL. And then he tells me he was in the Great American Bulldogs. And I don't put it together that he's the host. And this is how kind of as much of a crayon-eating, slow marine I am. I'm like, he would probably really like this awesome podcast. So there I was. It's like his era, his guys. So that was kind of funny. And then I'm listening to him, though, during the brief. And I start I know that voice. Like, where's that familiar? What is going on? And you guys never have your names on the show. You just use call signs. So I didn't put it together at first. But I won't say your name on the show. But your name makes it immediately obvious that your call sign is Fig. And I was like, wait, this must be Fig from the show. Holy crap, this is awesome. But then I was like, well, I'm not going to say anything because if I ball it up, I don't want to be the be on the next episode of. So there I was after tanking a
You
simulator.
should have
So
seen this idiot.
yeah,
Well, I can say Pfister, he was outstanding on his recurrent line check or recurrent sim check, and I would expect nothing less of a naval aviator, and he watered by. I was crying inside most of the time, and I had a hard time seeing because my eyes were full of tears almost the entire sortie. So
yeah,
it was
tears
all
of
good.
laughter. I'm sure.
Very nice. That's cool. Well, let's back up a little bit, and then we'll get you over Iraq again. But how did you get into flying?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Bay Area. I remember going to some air shows at Moffett Field right down there. I grew up in a town called San Carlos, which if you've flown into SFO, it's about 10 miles south of there. So Moffett Field, saw the Blue Angels, kind of got hooked on aviation. My grandfather was in World War II, he was in the 3rd Infantry Division, so he had a lot of really awesome stories. My dad was in the Navy during Vietnam, so kind of two parallel interests there, both aviation and the military. And I went to UC Davis up there near Sacramento. The Marine Corps, the Air Force and the Navy were kind of looking for technical degrees with a 3.5 or better, none of which I was capable of, but I could run kind of fast, do pull-ups, and get a 2.5 and pass the ASTB, Aviation Selection Test Battery, the aviation test, to get a flight contract with the Marine Corps. And I figured if I couldn't fly for some reason, the Marine Corps was the branch I wanted to go into. So that's kind of how I got started.
Excellent.
Very cool.
And so were you a PLC or OCS guy?
I was PLC combined, so I went and did the 10-week course.
That's what I did
between my junior and senior year.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I don't know if I was a two summer guy. I don't know if I would have went back for the second one.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. We were talking about that yesterday. That's the funny thing. I failed that IQ test. I did go back, but I just can't help but think that they just make it a little bit easier or a little bit more fun for juniors, because if juniors had been anything like seniors, there's no way in hell I would have gone back. Seniors sucked.
Sense. I know.
Yeah.
Listen, man, the first 8 weeks of that 10-week OCS thing, I was really. It was. I hated the Marine Corps, but I wasn't leaving. I was like,
Right.
no way am I leaving. I'm gonna show you, you son of a bitch.
Can't make me quit.
Can't make me quit, you bastard. And he tried hard.
Yeah.
Well, okay. And so obviously you made it through, and you went to the basic school and then on to flight school. Any regarding OCS OCS, any memorable, humorous moments that stick with you to this day?
No, nothing too memorable from OCS. TBS, I remember freezing my ass off because it was frozen Fox. I'm sure everybody says this, but supposedly that was the worst winter they'd had in Northern Virginia in like 20 years or something. So I just remember waking up in like snow drifts and dreaming of Pensacola.
Hey, what Fox of what year?
Fox of 02, 03. So I started September 02 and then finished up in it was like April. Actually, I was in the barber shop in either Quantico or maybe right out the gate there, town that was like Garrisonville or something like that. As Saddam's statue was getting pulled down. So I thought I was going to miss the war. I was like freaking out. And turns out it went on for a few more years.
Whoops, yeah.
Yes, it did. Oh, too funny. Thinking of that cold, I remember we were doing it. It's NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical warfare, lovingly referred to as Platoon in the Glad Bag in Quantico in January of '85. when they were doing Reagan's second inauguration. I think the coldest inauguration on record. So
Yeah.
it seems to get there, which is amazing how stinking cold it can get in the South, in Virginia.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Yeah.
brutal.
It was, just for a California guy, it was not a fun experience.
No,
I was
no.
glad I had an air contract at that point.
Right. Well,
Fig Mac.
speaking of
right.
right.
Yeah.
Hey, that's an acronym you
F
should
it,
probably
F it.
define.
Yeah. F it, I got my air contract.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So that was like half our company was pilots. They actually called us like Fox Squadron instead of Wings. There were so many air contracts in there.
Oh, yeah. Good.
I guess there is kind of a funny story from commissioning. Now that you mentioned that, because the day before I was going to get commissioned, the OSO, who's officer selection officer, basically an officer recruiter, he calls me and he's like, Dan, we lost your flight physical paperwork. There's two options. You can delay, or we could commission you right now as a ground contract, and
boy.
we'll switch it over to an air once we find your paperwork. And I'm like, damn it. This is like your total cliche, like recruiter kind of screwing you over thing.
Right.
But and I had all this family coming up for like commission and everything. This was in like April, and I had to wait like 6 months to actually start active duty. But anyway, I knew it was true that they weren't taking ground contracts. That's kind of what he told me. He's like, we don't need any ground contracts right now. That was right after 9/11. Everybody was trying to join up. He's like, we still need pilots. So I kind of took his word for it and took the plunge and got commissioned as a ground contract. And it didn't finally get sorted out until I was like the first week of TBS. So.
Oh, shit. That's not stressful at all.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But it all worked out.
Wow. Well, you are a trusting
Yeah.
individual. That's rough. That's rough.
That could have ended badly. No two ways about it.
For sure.
So you threw a couple acronyms out in the very beginning, and I'm before we get too far. You said TIC. I know what that means, but can you define that?
Yeah, sure. So a TIC is a troops in contact. It's basically a term meaning that there's friendly ground forces under fire from the enemy, receiving effective fire, I think is the actual book definition, and that they need air.
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect. And then the other acronym, I think we covered MOTS. Did we cover MOTS? Repeat.
Yeah, we have, but let's remind folks.
What's that?
Yeah, it stands for Marine Aviation Weapons and Tactics Squadron 1. Most people just call it MOTS. It's the Marine Corps' Aviation Weapons School, so kind of the equivalent of Navy, Top Gun, and Air Force Weapons School.
Perfect. Thank you. So
that's pretty intense. And you taught there for how long?
I taught there for 3 years, from 2013 to 2016.
Wow. How many classes a year would you guys put through there?
We would put through 2 classes a year, and then the rest of the time we would basically go out and do IP upgrades. So the way training in the squadron would work, you have certain qualifications you would need to do certain sorties. So like air to air, for example, you need an ACTI, an air combat tactics instructor would be required to teach those sorties. And we would go out and make the air combat tactics instructors, the night systems instructors that would train guys how to fly on night vision goggles. And then, so the squadron would kind of build them up, give them some practice reps, and then they would go through a certification with the MOTS instructors. And then they'd be signed off and go back and teach the fleet. And then at WTI, they would send guys through, they would go through a 6-week course, 2 weeks of academics, and then 4 weeks of pretty awesome flying, like some of the best sorties out there, really good training. And then they would come back to the squadron, and then they would be the training officer for the squadron.
Awesome.
Okay.
It's kind of like teach the teacher.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Instruct the instructor, and then send them back with all the knowledge.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at I'm looking at notes here, and you went after TBS, you go to flight school, and I see here you were late for FAM 0 and VT2. So obviously you did primary at VT2. How does that work out for you?
Yeah. So I was VT2. It was the same. So the CO at the time of VT6 was actually Vapor, one of your
Oh,
previous
no
guests.
way.
So yeah. So he was the CEO of VT6. I was over VT2, and at the time, cell phones were kind of new in 2002. Like they were around, but I had one of
Oh,
those
yeah.
like shitty Nokia that you could play Snake on or whatever. And they made everybody have a landline, and that was like the primary means of contacting people. And they had like an AODO type guy, assistant operations duty officer, who was a student, and he would sit there. And as changes came through the flight schedule, and they had to shift stuff around. They would have to call the other students and tell them like, "Hey, you're whatever 1400 flight got changed to a 1200 flight or whatever." In my case, my 1400 FAM zero was basically like meet your on wing, learn how to do a pre-flight, ask you some questions, see if you studied, and then you get ready to go do your first flight like the next
Then
day.
get a ride in an airplane. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you don't get to FAM zero. You don't get to ride. You just
okay.
it was just a pre-flight demonstration and kind of meet your on wing type thing.
Okay.
So they changed my FAM zero from like a 12 or a 1400 to like a 06. So yeah, so I'm like, all right, I'll get up, work out, whatever. So at about 6:30, my on wing calls me and he's like, Dan, where the F are you? Like, you're like half an hour late. I'm like, it was supposed to be like 12. How can I be late? He's like, no. And so I go and I look, I'd missed it. My message machine has like the blinking light. It's like,
Oh, shit.
this is Ensign so and so. We've changed your FAM zero to 0. So he was a great on wing. He was a cool guy. He understood, and kind of gave me a pass on that. And went pretty well after that, but it was a rough debut.
Right? Oh, that's a terrible feeling. At
Yeah.
least it didn't make it into the recording, but a recent guest we had, of course, as soon as we stopped recording, then the great stories come out. Talks
Right.
about showing up drunk to a simulator.
Nice.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
not a way to make friends and influence people there, but
Right.
So you did VT2 obviously, and then where'd you go through jet training?
Yeah, VT2, and then I went up to Meridian, VT9. They were still flying T2s there, but by the time I got there, it was all a T45 syllabus. So they still had some guys in VT2 doing, like intermediate T2s. Then they would go to VT7 and finish in T45s. By the time I got there, they've been pretty well into like several months into just doing a pure T45 syllabus. So I was VT9 the whole way through. Yeah.
okay.
VT9, VT19,
VT9. VT9.
VT9. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously, so it says that you almost got prowlers. So obviously you must have flown too good at the boat,
This
right?
is I don't know. I wasn't particularly good at the boat. I mean, I passed my first time, but I was definitely fleet average on that. But what happened was there was another buddy of mine, Scratcher. I'll tell you offline who he is, and you probably know his dad. But anyway, me and him were neck and neck for the second spot amongst Marines that were selecting in that class. And they were doing like a quality spread. So basically it was like whatever the first guy wanted, he got what he wanted. Second guy got whatever he wanted as long as it wasn't what the first guy wanted. And then the third guy would get prowlers if there was a prowler slot. So
Shit.
So Scratcher was slightly ahead of me, but he went out on his ACM 15 check, that one where it's like the two students and the instructor, and he was at Key Field in Meridian because they were doing like an out and in or something, and he took the runway with no flaps, so so he got it down, and that put my score just far enough ahead of him to put me in second. But Scratcher was anthroed out. So anthroed out is like anthropometric measurements.
Oh,
I think.
yeah.
Whether you can fit in the
your legs
prowler
are
had
too
like,
long.
Yeah.
You fit in the ejection
Right.
seat rate.
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
that, so, okay.
Yeah, Scratcher had some like dinosaur arms or something, so he couldn't.
Well, he had long. It's the thigh.
Yeah.
It's your femur. He had long femurs.
Yeah. He had something weird going on. So he was anthroed out. So it fell to the next guy. So the guy after him got Prowlers, and we both got Harriers,
Whoa,
which
good
was
deal.
awesome.
Man.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what's
that's-
amazing to me is taking the runway without flaps. Okay, today that'd be a debrief item, but the crap in flight school guys got downs for. It's like, oh,
yeah,
God.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Another
Did you
funny
give
part
many
of that
downs as
story-
an instructor, Fig?
Yeah, but I mean, no, I didn't. The ones that I gave downs to, it was a safety thing. Danger,
Yeah, too.
danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could have killed me, somebody else, yourself, maybe a lot of people at once.
Right.
Those are the kind of things I was a down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Wow.
Let's see.
Man. So you got your wings, and this is about
Yep.
the 03, 04 time frame?
So I started there in 04 in advance, and I got my wings in 05. So like August of 05. Yeah, and then over to 203. There was like a 6-month wait in the pool there. There was
For
Yeah,
needing
they were-
people, it amazes me the amount of time we spent in pools, and
Right.
I don't mean swimming pools.
yeah,
Waiting to start the next phase of training.
Right.
yeah.
Talk about inefficiency. So what did they have you do for 6 months?
That's a pretty good story too. So I had two roommates. We had a house on the river, the Neuse River there in New Bern, kind of that James City area.
Yeah.
And our one roommate, Pooch, he was like super pissed that we had a pool. Like he was like, "This is bullshit. I signed up to go to war. Like, why am I sitting here doing nothing?" He's like, "I'm gonna go tell the OPSO, like, send me to Iraq. This is bullshit that we're sitting here." I'm like, "Pooch, don't do it, man. Don't do it.
Bro.
Yeah, like, this is not gonna end well." Well, what he also didn't tell us was that our other buddy, Spackle, he had like some connection at Pax River. Like I think his dad was a test pilot or something. So he was working a deal for them to go to Pax River and like fly in the back of Hornets and stuff. So Pooch does this. He goes in the OPSO's office on like a Friday. The OPSO was Words. I'm not sure if you guys know him or not, but
Oh yeah.
yeah. So he goes in there and he's like, "This is bullshit. Send me to Iraq if you have to. I don't want to sit around in a pool and not do anything." He's like, "All right, noted." So on Monday, there's an AOM, and we go in there, and the first thing out of the gate, we're just like, "All right, we got some RP jobs coming down. Fister, you're going to go to S1, which is like the admin shop. You're going to help out this new thing called DTS, Defense Travel System." I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it
Yes,
sucks.
it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah. And then our other roommate was Buck, and they're like, "Buck, you're going to go to NATOP, to DOS and help sort out NATOP's jackets."
Director of
And then,
Safety and Standardization.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. And then he's like, "Pooch and Spackle, you're going to Pax River to fly Hornets around." We're like, "God damn it."
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah. So since then, I've always called him Good Deal Pooch. Fig, you might run into him because he's with us too. So if you see him, be sure to call him that. He hates it, but he deserves it. But I can't get too mad at him. He met his wife up there. He's overall a great dude, but in that
He met
case,
his wife when he was at Pax River?
Yeah.
Well, see,
yeah,
he was
yeah.
supposed to go there, right?
I know that. Yeah, exactly. It was destiny.
Wow.
Man, I was thinking, man, Words is going to hammer. He's going to get, you want to do something stupid
Yeah.
here. Well, we'll take
Right.
care of you. But no,
We got a good deal for you.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chase Cole said DTS is the worst.
It is the
in
worst.
the comments section there.
Yeah.
And then
because,
backing up a little bit, Sticks was saying you could get coasties get washed out for no apparent fear of death. I guess we saw some of that too.
Hey, Taco Bell's on Tales with Taco, and he said the Matzig Marine Aviation Training Support Group, the Matzig pool where lieutenants check in, but they never check out.
Kind of like Hotel California, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh shit. Okay, I don't want to get sidetracked here because we got to get to your stuff. All right,
we got to get you back to Iraq.
Well, yeah. So let's see. I don't know where to. I'm kind of looking at here. Initial tanker qual day before combat ops. That was your initial tanker qual.
You can't do it in the rag, can you?
Yeah. So I was telling Repeat this the other day. So I get to 211 and we're like, we get there 6 months before we're going to deploy with the 11th MEU. That's Marine Expeditionary Unit, but most guys pronounce it MEU, MEU. And you deploy as a composite squadron with, in that year it was 46s. Now it's Ospreys, and some, attack helicopters, 53s, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, we at 203 at the time, they were so, hard up to get guys out the door, they waived or deferred the tanker code. So we get there, we go through all the workups in the fleet, getting ready to go on the deployment, and they can never get a tanker lined up. Every time it's scheduled, it falls out for whatever reason. So we get to the Persian Gulf and we're about to start OAF support, and I still haven't been in the tanker.
Oh boy.
And every sortie at that time was like multiple hits at the tanker. So thankfully, actually, I think it was the Truman, might have been the Roosevelt, I can't remember, but there was a CV out there as well, and somehow they worked it out so we could go in there, join their tanker stack, and they always had a tanker configured F-18 to refuel guys if they couldn't trap for whatever reason. So me and BC came in there, 2 Harriers cruising through the Marshall stack, and got my 3 plugs. I was qualified to go fly OAF the next day. So
what did they give you, like 50 pounds of fuel at a time or something? Hey, okay, get out of the basket. All right, come back in.
Yeah. It wasn't much. So
well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Well, some of the most spectacular aerial demonstrations I've ever seen were in and around that tanker basket. And one of which, the most spectacular aerial display of flying I've ever seen in my life was my co-horst behind, I think it was a KC, it was a Marine KC-130, and he did this octaflugeron around the... It was amazing.
I gave him the basket back. I didn't take it with me.
I was certain I was getting ready to watch the biggest mishap in my life, and somehow he corkscrewed the thing back out from.
Yeah.
It was tangled. The thing was tangled around the whole. It was like they had him in a death grip, and he flew. I can't even explain it. At one point, I think he was upside down. But he got it out.
So the funny thing about this is Styx is like, I need to tell my version of this story because you've referenced it several times. Here's the worst part of it. I have zero recollection of that. None.
It was a traumatic event, so I'm sure.
My brain is going, you don't want to remember that, dude.
I'm just watching helpless going, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is not going to end well.
Must have been somebody else. Couldn't be me.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it was somebody else. I must be mistaken.
It was another repeat.
Let's see.
Oh man.
So
you get the call the day before. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to combat. Now you're gonna need to do it in combat. So let's give you one look at it before you go.
One look before we go. Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong? Well, okay, so you're in Iraq. Now this is your first time though, so you aren't a MOTS instructor yet. But I don't know.
Yeah,
you want to talk about the one
time.
you opened with? How you find yourself?
Yeah, so that was at the kickoff, or pretty close to kickoff of Inherent Resolve. So, if you guys remember 2014, the Islamic State kind of overran like the western half of Iraq and the eastern half of Syria. We're kind of waging their psychotic campaign there. So, 211 was already forward deployed, and they were. They weren't planning on doing Inherent Resolve because it hadn't started yet, but it quickly went from just kind of a presence deployment to being a no shit combat deployment. And they went out the door kind of really short on flight leads. So it was pretty much, they had their field grade and their WTI, their weapons and tactics instructor, who'd just gone through the course with us. So their CO came and asked if we could send a couple guys over. So Spam and I went over. Spam stayed for about 3 weeks. I stayed for 6 weeks. I didn't really have anything going on. And we just kind of flew with their young guys, flew with their section lead builds, the guys working up on quals and stuff like that. So that's how I found myself over Ramadi, Iraq in 2014. And I was down there working with some kind of special forces JTAC. And he was having me track some ISIS vehicles and whatnot. And yeah, the call came through from the Air Force CRC, I think, but they're basically a Combat Readiness Center, whatever their command and control was called. Their equivalent of the Marine Corps TAOC, or Tactical Air Operations Center. Basically, they kind of control deeper airstrikes and stuff like that. So they came back with info that there was a tick going on in Mosul, which is about 300 miles away. And my wingman and I had Slinky. He was a pretty new guy. He was kind of like me on my first one, where he just gotten out the door. But they were land based, so he was qualified, flying at night and everything. And we were working split kill box operations and doing what we called yo-yo tanker ops, where you would go to provide more time on station. You would go to the tanker as a single, come back, whatever. So we were separated, and he had come off the tanker fairly recently. I was getting down to basically, being at my tanker bingo when the tick came in. So I coordinated to get the tanker right to meet us on the way. I called Slinky over and was like, "Hey, we got to join up. Let's go. There's a tick going on in Mosul." And that's a pretty far transit, but so I'm kind of patting myself on the back, right, for like getting the tanker joined up. I've got everything suitcase. This is going to be great. And I get to the tanker, plug first try, top off. I'm off the tanker, and I'm like max blast going up to Mosul. And I'm directing Slinky's join. I'm like, this is shit hot. Like, I got gas in like minimal time. We're going to be up there. It's going to be great. Slinky's joining up on me. Perfect. And Slinky's about 10 miles away. I either had him on radar or I just saw him because I had goggles on. And I'm like calling out my position. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm at your, 2 o'clock, 10 miles, a little low. And he's like, I'm blind. I don't see you yet. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? So I'm thinking in my head, like, new guy, come on, let's go. I don't have time for this. There's a tick.
Get aboard, damn it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it dawns on me when he's at about 5 miles that I'm still blacked out, totally lights out, because I was under that. Yeah, because I was under that cloud deck in Ramai. The threat wasn't super high over there, but they had some like 30 millimeter man pads, man portable air defense, shoulder fired IR missiles that they took over from the Iraqis. So I wasn't going to be under the clouds.
Not a place you want to get shot down.
No, right. You don't want to be.
Yeah.
You'd
be in a very hands of ISIS. Yeah.
Disturbing video for sure.
Kind of like keeping your head on your shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. So I remembered I turned my lights on, my IR lights on anyway, and he saw it, joined up, and so we cruised up there. It worked out pretty well. We got the 9 line, which is kind of how a JTAC will pass along a brief for a close air support attack. So he gave us that. I was carrying 2 GBU-38s or possibly 1 GBU-54. It's guided bomb unit. Those are both essentially the JDAM variant, Joint Direct Attack Munition, basically a GPS IRS guided weapon.
500 pound.
500 pounders. Yeah. And he was carrying 1 GBU-38, the 500 pound variant, and a laser Maverick. So they just wanted the bomb. So we got the 9 line, got all 3 bombs on, and kind of vaporized this ISIS bunker that was giving them some trouble, and came back. But yeah, it almost was less of a good outcome.
Yeah. I don't have you in sight.
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
Come on, new guy.
Oh.
Yeah,
never mind.
Yeah.
All right, my fault. My bad.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
I think I've seen this video. It was the video I'm talking about. I got here AV8B versus mattress. And is that the nose gear that wouldn't come down? Is that the on the ship?
No. This is I actually left 203, but I had a lot of friends there still. This was like so this must have been 2007 ish, and the mech show at the time was a little bit crazy. Let's be honest about it. I won't say who he is, but anybody that was there would probably vouch for that. And Juice, you guys might know Juice, but he was flying. Great guy, great instructor. I did my safer solo check with him. He was flying. I think they were doing a FAM sortie with a newer student, and their nose gear wouldn't come down. And like you guys know, that there's a procedure for that to emergency extend the gear. But I guess the Mag CO on his like UK exchange tour at some point had seen this happen. And one time they did the emergency extension and the nose gear didn't come down and it like cracked the frame really bad. And so the second time they didn't they didn't do the emergency extension. They put a mattress underneath it and it was like it saved the day supposedly. Well,
Okay.
so yeah,
this doesn't sound
yeah,
like it's going to be a
right.
good end.
It's like,
Hold on, I have to
not.
jump in here. What could possibly go wrong? I
Yeah.
have to ask.
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
yeah, for a friend.
So like I said, the Mag CO was also kind of a micromanager. So he's listening to the 203 base frequency. So he hears Juice and the ODO kind of troubleshooting and trying to figure it out. And the Mag CO jumps on the radio and orders him not to do the NATOPS procedure. And you hear Juice on the tape. He's like, "Okay, understand you're directly ordering me not to follow NATOPS." It's like, "That's right. Don't blow the gear down, blah, 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 whatever." So it's like, "I want you to land on this mattress." So they bring a mattress out to, I think it was the South Pad.
So
And-
who has a mattress laying around?
I don't know.
How does that start?
Yeah.
Go to the barracks and get a mattress.
It's a
What?
great question. It's a great question. But they find a mattress and they strap it down with like some of those truck straps or whatever they managed to try and tie it down with. So he comes down, he's going to VL, and it's like looking pretty good until he gets to about 10
Vertical
feet.
landing. Yep.
And it's just, yeah, he's doing a vertical landing. And it just freaking sucks the whole mattress through
I saw that coming.
the engine. You've probably seen there's pictures of it all over the internet. If you Google like Harrier mattress and everything, and it, destroys the motor or whatever. They land, they're both okay. Both the pilots are okay. And, they get out. But that's not even the end of the story though, because eventually they get into the hangar, they get it on jacked up. They tow it into the hangar. They try the emergency extension, and of course it works. 4.0 nose gear comes down, no
Yeah.
problem. But then there's a Marine that's like huffing paint, because why not?
Yeah.
And he drives a tug into the side of the thing
Oh shit.
and damages it even more. So that was the end of Harrier versus Mattress.
Well, you know what they say.
You can't fix stupid.
So was it the Huffin the Huffin Marine that drove the tug into the
he drove
shit.
the tug. Yeah.
So it was like a kick it you already down and kicked him in the junk.
Yeah. That poor airplane was.
Wow.
It's not its
Wow.
day. Yeah.
Right? That is amazing.
So Lee Shima, Fuzz, Flyby,
Oh, yeah.
Iashima. So,
Yeah,
were
so-
you at Westpacking at the time?
Yeah, we were doing Westpac, and then we'd also support the 31st BU was permanently stationed or deployed out there. So we were at Kadena, getting ready to go on the boat. And you guys ever been to Ishima?
It's the little bombing island.
No, it's
Iashima?
it's an FCLP facility. So there's a
okay.
field carrier landing practice where you go. It's basically a LHD deck marked up with all the spots around the ship, and you go practice your shipboard landings before you go out to the ship.
Okay.
You got to get a certain number of passes and be deemed qualified at the field before you go out to the ship. So
Okay.
we're at Kadena doing this, and everybody started doing like shit hot flybys when they finished their passes or whatever. They would go out, come by. There was a bunch of Marines out there. Would kind of motivate the Marines. There was nothing out there, So it was basically go out to the initial, put the power in the corner, and fly by low and fast.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there on ODO back at Kadena, and Kaz calls up. Kaz was out there doing FCLPs with Fuzz, and he's like, "Hey, we need gear downlocks, and we need to roll paddles to the VL pad at Kadena." And I'm like, "Why? What's going on?" He's like, "We had a gear overspeed." I'm like, okay, I mean, guys overspeed the gear, like not all the time, but it's pretty common and it's not really dramatic. It's like kind of
Okay.
not that big of a deal,
It's a
right?
maintenance inspection.
Yeah,
Usually
it's
they
an
don't damage
Yeah.
anything.
inspection.
Yeah.
It's usually not a big deal. But I'm like, how much did he overspeed it by? And they're like, I don't want to say it on the radio. I'm like, holy shit.
Oh.
So apparently so they come back, they land, they've got the down locks, they put the down locks in it, everything's fine.
Did he
they
never
tow
put
the
them
jet
up?
back.
Did he
So
never pull the
yeah,
gear up?
Oh, I
so
did. I know
Fuzz
this coming.
so Fuzz and Fuzz is like, he won't mind me telling the stories. He's good buddies. We were in the same school, TBS class, API class, primary, advanced, 2 deployments together. So he does a short takeoff, which you always do with the ship, off the FCLP deck, and the LSO tells him, it was GOAT, our XO. He says, all right, clear downwind for panels check, which is basically a way to say, hey, go fly low and fast without saying go fly low and fast.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, report the initial. So he comes around, throws the power in the corner, gets going as fast as he can, calls the initial, and GOAT says, is your landing light on? Which, as you guys know, only is on if the gear's down.
Yeah, right.
So
No.
he hit about 525 knots with the gear down.
So that is remarkable considering that's a lot of drag, right? I mean, that is a lot of drag.
Mistakes were made.
Yeah,
And he still had that thing going over 500 knots.
yeah.
That's just power. It's sheer power.
Yeah. There's no stopping the
Did
mighty
he still
jump
have
jet
all
down low.
Did he lose a gear
Yeah.
door or anything? Did it
No,
all hang
everything
on?
was fine. It was all good.
You know what? That's a
So
testament.
that is a testament. It proves that the gear speed was a BS number.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And several years later, I was sitting in aviation safety commander's course, and they brought in this engineer, gave a really great presentation on how they come up with like limits and stuff. And he's like, well, yeah, you can exceed things by a little bit here and there, but that chips away at the margins. I'm like, well, how do you come up with, say, like a 250 knot gear speed for the Harrier? Because I've seen that exceeded by a lot on several occasions.
It's like an arbitrary number. It's 250.
yeah, right, yeah.
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 So Iwakuni oil lit bad weather.
Oh,
oil
yeah.
light.
So
Oil light. Yeah.
oil-
Okay, I got you.
Yeah. Oil caution light, which is probably one of 2 really shitty emergencies in the Harrier. Fire warning light being the other one. I don't know why oil was a caution. It probably should have been a warning light, but it's a land as soon as possible.
Yeah, when you have
emergency.
one engine and you have an oil
Yeah,
light, that's
right.
probably,
Yeah. So this was a good lesson for me. And if nobody else is flying on the entire airfield, you should probably not be flying either. But we were out there and we're trying to make flight hours. It's like 2 days before Christmas, and it's like pouring rain, 402.
Is it nighttime too, or is it?
It's nighttime for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's like 2100 or something.
Because nothing good ever happens in the day, or nothing
Right.
bad ever happens in the
Yeah.
day. Yes.
Yeah.
No.
So there's not even any like the normal divert you use over there. You guys were both flown over there, I think, but there's like Nitabaru and Suwiki that we would always use. Those were all not legal. So I find some random Japanese airport that was technically legal. If I had to go there, there's probably no way in hell it would have ended well. But so I find a legal divert, and me and Bicker take off, and we're not carrying any bombs or anything, but we've got full drop tanks. We're in radar jets, and we've got lightning pods, so fairly heavy airplane. Right as I break the deck on the stow and start cleaning up, I get the caution from Bitch and Betty.
Great.
And I think it's like, you get aft bay cautions a lot that are just kind of like a nuisance thing where you reset them and it's no big deal, or you get like a dep res will kick off or something, reset, no big deal. So that's what I'm kind of thinking it's going to be. And I look down and it's oil. I'm like, shit.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And
That's bad on a good bad scale. That oil light, because you only got one engine.
right. Yeah. And the procedure for that, we would do what's called an auto flap variable nozzle slow landing, where you would set the power at a certain RPM, 80 to 85% band, and that would supposedly was the easiest on the engine. and then you would manipulate the nozzles to kind of manage your energy
Right.
and come down and land. So I get vectored around. You practice a lot in the simulator and in the airplane, but usually you're like already in the landing pattern. So it's pretty rare to practice it from altitude or from like a GCA approach or something like that. Which, PAR, ground controlled approach, precision approach radar, basically where the ground controller is talking you down on your instrument approach. So that's what I end up flying. I come around and break out, and land, and I go into what's called power nozzle braking or PNB, where the nozzles on the Harrier, and that the slow landing part, that's kind of a misnomer, because on an auto flap variable, you're landing at like 150-ish knots,
which is fast.
which is
for
pretty
that
fast
airplane,
in a
right?
Harrier. Yeah. So you can't use the brakes at that speed because they'll totally burn up and catch on fire. So we would use what's called power nozzle braking, which is basically a reverse thrust capability. The nozzles would swivel past, pure vertical and go to about, they go to 98 degrees, which is about 16 degrees forward because the way the datum of the engine's set. So 82 degrees was straight down, essentially. And then 98 was braking stop, we called it. And then you could run the power up to 70%, I think was how high we would go typically. And that would slow you down. So I do that. Everything's looking good. I'm down to about 60 knots. And if you guys remember the old runway, so they since built a new one, but the old runway at Iwakuni, it had a resting gear at like 1,200 feet.
Yeah.
And you guys probably remember
yeah.
the limit of the arresting gear was five
Five knots.
knots.
Something like that.
Yeah. So when I go to brake to stop for the resting gear, I get like zero braking action. I'm just hydroplaning down the runway.
Great.
At like 55 knots. I haven't really slowed down at all. And I see the arresting gear coming up. Beyond that, there's about 1,200 feet, and then there's no overrun or anything on this road. It's just a cliff that goes into the water. So I'm kind of like, oh, shit. I take the arresting gear at about 50 knots, just kind of thump right over it.
Were you kind of cringing, waiting for one of the outriders to snag?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. But I get over that, no problem. I'm still going like 50 knots, and the end of the runway's coming up, and I know it's not going to stop.
Oh, shit.
So I'm like, well, if the motor was going to quit by now, I think it would have quit. So I just stowed off again. So I just took off again. So I went, nozzled aft, which basically points them all the way back, and I went to mill power. And once I got kind of the motor spooled up and felt the thrust kick in, I brought the nozzles back in to do a normal short takeoff. The only kind of drawback to that was I was in auto flaps and not in what we call stall flaps or short takeoff landing flaps, which gives you a lot more. You get 62 degrees of flaps in stall flaps. You only get 25 with the gear down in auto flaps. So I don't have the same lift capabilities, but it kind of, and by the way, I dumped fuel down. So the whole time around the GCA, I had the dumps on, but I was coming down from like almost 12,000 pounds of gas. I got down to about 4,000. The internal of the Harrier was like 2,800 pounds. So I couldn't get all the way down before I had to shut them off because I was about to land. So I have like 4,000 pounds of gas. I'm in auto flaps, and it kind of like unsticks and hangs out for a little bit in ground effect before it starts to kind of eke away. But tower, all they see is me like go off the end of the runway and then disappear into the clouds.
Oh, shit.
They couldn't tell. They thought I disappeared off the cliff. So they're like, nightmare so-and-so, did you just crash? Holy shit. They crashed fire rescues rolling.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Everybody else at the club, like, watching this whole spectacle. And so I come back around, and I could kind of, like, that was over the bay, which we turned right downwind.
Yeah.
And so I could kind of, I had night vision goggles on, so I could pick through and kind of see, like, where the lights of the runway were a little bit through the clouds. And so, well, that's probably not going to work if I try that auto flap variable nozzle again. So I just did a rolling vertical landing, which is a much slower approach speed, like a 70 knot rolling vertical land. I stopped, no problem. So, so yeah, it ended up, yeah. So that was that was a good lesson for me though. Nobody else.
Holy shit.
3 Hornet squadrons there. Nobody was flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, Chase wrote in a comment too. He says, "You talking about the firelight?" He says he remembers another time when you started up the jet, got a firelight right away. and it wouldn't go out. And said they came in
Yeah.
the avionics shop. Hey, you got to come
Yeah.
fix this. He said he crawled up on the jet, and someone
Yeah,
had
yeah.
taped the fire down with the
Yeah.
it's an ESD tape, electrostatic discharge tape.
Yeah.
Used to cover open connectors. So they're supposed to use plastic caps, not ESD tape. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but he got your firelight out. It was a piece of tape.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, in your story, Fister, you said something I don't know we've ever covered. So, Bitch and Betty, you said, hey, Bitch and Betty was talking. Can you describe? Have we ever talked about that?
I don't think we have.
Talk about Bitch and Betty.
She's a real person, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a woman who recorded
Bitch
this.
and Betty is the audio that you hear when you get some kind of a warning indication. So for warning lights, it would tell you what it was. Yeah, it would
Engine
say
fire.
engine fire. Exactly like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a female's voice. Apparently, NASA or somebody decided that if it was a male's voice, men wouldn't really listen, but a female's voice would get their attention, right? So
exactly.
So all these voices are in a female's voice, kind of computer driven, And like you were saying, it was caution, oil. Caution,
she was a real person. I get Sticks points out she recently retired. I seem to remember that.
What?
We ought to get her on and see if she can do the whole podcast.
Are you serious?
Tone.
She's a real person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I do. I remember reading the article when she retired. It was like
Was her name really Betty?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Sticks will look it up, I bet.
Well, it doesn't have the same effect if her name was Katie or Laura. Bitch and Laura? No, Bitch and Katie. Well, Bitch and Katie would have been
Lion
okay.
Laura.
Bitch and Ethel? No, not Bitch and Ethel. Bitch and Linda. Bitch and Betty just kind of has a roll to it.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff.
That's awesome.
Well, let's see. Looking through the notes here.
No,
Meridian. Meridian sim instructors.
Yeah.
Oh,
Meridian sim instructors. These were probably.
Were you guys Meridian guys? Or
I was a Meridian when I went through as a student, and when I went through, and then when I was an instructor, I was in Kingsville.
So those guys were like savages. I mean, like they're not all of them, but there was like 3 or 4 guys that were like, holy shit! If you got them on the schedule, it was like dread the entire day prior or whatever. Some of it turned out to not be true. Some of it turned out to be absolutely true. But the 2 couple stories I have with that, there was one I'll just call him Mr. Z. Well, I never had him in sims going through getting ready to fly the jet, and I get there I got all the way through basic instruments was the first kind of stage you did in the T-45, and on the flight schedule for my BI-10, your first flight in the jet was this guy on the flight. I'm like, how can he do flights? He's a sim instructor.
Right.
And somebody was like, no, he's a Navy reservist. He also flies with the squad. I'm like, oh shit.
Oh shit.
First flight in the T-45, son of a bitch. But it turned out this guy is actually like awesome. So he was the one where it was like totally unwarranted. He was a prior Marine A6 driver that went over to the Navy side and was a Navy captain reservist.
Wow. And
so the first thing he said, he's like, all right, you probably heard about me in the simulator. What have you heard? I was like, kind of heard you're kind of an asshole. He's like, yeah, well, I'm not like that in the airplane. So here's what I want you to do. Go right on the board. Have fun. So have fun. Where he's like, that's what we're going to do tonight. Like, it's going to be great. And it was true. And even in the sim, when I had him later, he was actually funny. He was like, he would yell at you, but it was kind of like a good-natured yelling. The guy that was not a good-natured yelling, I'll just call him JD. This guy was like, you would get in there for the brief, and it would be nicest man in the world, very calm, brief. He'd ask you a few softball questions, and you'd know him, and he'd be like, great job. You get in the sim, and I had him for a WEPS hop, and I'm flying the pad. I think we flew at 250 knots, and I'm like 253 knots in the pattern, and the sim goes on freeze, and I just hear this pounding on the table. He's like, what the F? What are you effing doing?
Because you're 3 knots over?
What? Yeah, he's like, what is the pattern airspeed? 250 knots, sir. He's like, then why the fuck are you at 253 knots? You are a lazy aviator. I was like, oh my God. So the whole sim goes like that. And I get out and I'm like, holy shit, like he's going to send me like packing, like straight out of flight school. But no, it was just right, just back to the brief manner. It was like, great job in there, 2 above hop. It's like, what?
Wow.
Yeah. So,
That's
So he's all about the harassment.
yeah, anybody that's been through Meridian within the last probably, I don't know, I think he retired and like, I think he actually passed away, unfortunately, a few years back. But he was legendary in Meridian.
backing up. Bitchin' Betty was Leslie Shook, and she worked for Boeing for over 20 years recording those voices
Oh, there you go.
that you heard in your headset. Yeah.
Who knew? That's awesome.
Sticks knew.
How about that? Way to go, Sticks. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan stabbing away at the basket.
Okay, well, I feel like I got to tell the good Obi-Wan story before I embarrass Obi-Wan.
Please do. Obi-Wan.
So, yeah, so this was another Inherent Resolve story when I was with 211. Like I said, I was kind of flying with some of their new section leads or their new guys, and Obi-Wan was a new prospective section lead. And we would do, we had what were called FLEASY checks, Flight Leadership Standardization Evaluation sorties. So the idea was you got a external, instructor pilot to come take a look at the section lead or division lead or whatever and sign them off as standardized. So it was usually like a WTI, basically from another squadron. So we're flying Inherent Resolve sortie as his FLEASY check. And we're up there, we're getting all of these targets to go look at, and it goes on for like, these sorties were like 8-hour sorties, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you'd have to tank like 5 or 6 times. And it was like doing a transpac with combat in between.
Oh boy.
So this is going on for a while, and we're each carrying I think a GB38 JDAM and a laser Maverick AGM 65 Echo, which is an awesome weapon, and you never get to shoot them in training. And I'd never shot one. Yeah. So we finally get.
Hey, Fister, are both of you guys carrying a target pod, or is only one of you guys have a pod?
We're both carrying targeting pods. So either one of us. Okay. And that variant of the laser Maverick, you had to buddy laze because the interface blanked out the targeting pod, so you couldn't self laze it. The ones they have now, the Echo 2, you can actually self designate and self laze it.
So your
but at that time,
laze for you.
Right. So we finally get tasking to smash this ISIS technical vehicle, which is, like, you've probably seen them on news clippings, a big, mech'd up truck with a heavy machine gun in it or whatever. So we're out there and they tell us, and they were dictating our weapon to target match in this case. So it's they wanted a laser Maverick. And we would do, before attacks, what was called an attack weapons audible, where you basically tell what kind of attack we do, what the roles were, so who was the shooter and who was the designator. So he makes the call. We're calling it Siege. He says, Siege 1-1, Buddy LMAV, Siege 1-2, shooter, which meant I got to shoot the LMAV. So
nice.
I was like, I didn't say it because I was like, oh, if I say this, we'll find. I was like, dude, you just passed your FLEASY check. But so we shot it. It was awesome. It blew this thing to hell, and then we came back. It's like, yeah, man, great job, especially letting me shoot the LMAP.
and you passed your check right.
And you passed your check right. Yeah, so that was the good Obi-Wan story. The funny one is that I was flying. I can't remember if it was prior to that one or after, but we were tanking in like eastern Syria, and it was bad conditions, like in and out of the weather. The baskets are moving up like 3 or 4 feet at a time. And I went for, or
this is off. Were you tanking off a KC-130, Fister?
This was a Strat tanker. So it was either,
shit.
It was either a KC-135 or it might have been a like a coalition tanker.
But it was normally those are pretty stable. So you must have been in some weather.
It was some pretty shitty weather. Yeah. So I got lucky. Like I had my share of tanker buffoonery certainly, but I get in on like the first stab. But Obi-Wan is stabbing away, and we missed like almost an entire vole. Him trying to plug,
Oh
and I'm
boy.
pulling up like divert numbers for Azrac Jordan, which again neither one of us had ever been to, so that was going to be great if we had to divert into there. But
Want to go? Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
because
yeah,
you were worried that he wasn't going to
right,
get gas, and you didn't
yeah,
have
yeah,
gas to make it anywhere
yeah,
else.
yeah,
Holy
yeah.
shit!
So he finally gets in. We finish the sortie, whatever. We get back. We do, we stay on station longer or whatever to make up for what we missed. But 6 months later, I'm doing his weapons training officer certification, and we're the first few events are simulators. And in the scenario that we had, you went to the tanker, and he goes up there. Did you guys tank? It was in NATOP. Something. It wasn't a Shaw, but I think it was like recommended that you tank in V-stall master mode because you had more information. You had the bald you could trim out, which was pretty important when you were tanking. You had your flaps on there, so you could tell what your flaps were doing. Well, he goes up there just in nav master mode with none of that information to tank, and so I was just like, "Hey, man, like it's recommended that you tank in V-stall master mode," and so these were linked sims, by the way. So by this point, we could link up the sims. So he had a wingman who was another guy from their Iraq deployment, and and I just see him like shaking his head because Obi-Wan goes, "Well, this is how I did it, in Iraq and Syria for 6 months," and like his wingman shaking his head because I have the cameras on him. And I couldn't resist. I was like, I keyed the mic. I was like, "Oh yeah." Like when you were stabbing away, we missed an entire bowl because you couldn't get the pass.
No.
Oh man, I was like, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, I guess you blank those things out, right? Because you
Yeah,
don't want to remember
yeah,
the
yeah,
not so
yeah,
good things.
Yeah.
Hey, so something you said, just a few minutes ago made me start thinking.
yeah,
So this is, sometimes we don't want to talk about this sort of thing. That's 8 hours sortie, 8 hours
yeah,
strapped in an ejection seat. So physiologically, I mean, hello. So are you pedal
yeah,
packing? Are you just
yeah,
holding it? What the hell, man?
yeah. Multiple piddle packs, multiple snacks. I mean, you've got a pharmacy with you, as they're giving you go pills,
Yeah,
which is like a legal amphetamine,
right.
um, to stay alert. And it is hard on the body. I mean, it is tough. And I was there for 6 weeks with them. Then I did Inherent Resolve again when I was the dead OIC for the 15th MU, and we only did it for like 30 days. So the guys that did it for 6 months straight, flying every 4 or 5 days, it's tough. Yeah,
That's brutal,
where's your
right?
body
It's
out
brutal.
for sure?
There's got to be a
Yeah,
better way. Holy
yeah,
smokes. But
yeah,
hence, the song we use as our theme song
Yeah, yeah, right.
yeah, exactly.
is all
Right.
about that.
Yeah,
You get
yeah,
crossing the ocean, you got no
Yeah,
choice.
yeah,
fiddle pack.
yeah, yeah,
And if
definitely.
anybody, in case we've never covered it before, I think we have. A piddle pack is basically a heavy duty Ziploc bag with a sponge
Yeah,
in it to soak up
yeah,
your urine,
yeah,
and it's got
and
a zippy on the
yeah.
top, right?
And there's a great Dos Gringos song about
Yes,
trying to
yeah.
execute that procedure.
That's our theme song. Yeah,
It's the
the name.
12-inch
You
penis
know
song.
what?
Yeah,
That's it. We are an adult show or adult rated
yeah,
show or not for kids rated show, I guess. The name of the
yeah,
song is 12-inch penis by those gringos.
Yeah.
He's praying for that so he can use the piddle pack without pissing all over himself. So
yeah, yeah.
All right, Fister. To keep this thing moving, I see Westpac 31st Mu Round 2 steel BBs on the flight deck. What the hell is that about?
Yeah,
Steel
so
BBs. That doesn't
the
sound good.
the
no,
Navy
sounds
would
downright bad.
yeah, the Navy would resurface their flight decks. They would have to basically remove the non-skid surface before they put the new coating on. And for some reason, I guess because it was the easiest way to do it, they would just blast it with like steel shot. And they were supposed to contain it very tightly, but that didn't always happen. And there was a couple of has reps where this happened before, and some Harriers had gotten FOD damage because you know, they're kind of embedded. They get
Right.
embedded in the
Yeah.
non-skid, and so right before we were going out to go on the ship basically for the 31st Muse kind of 2-week patrol or whatever they were doing. We meet we kind of like, well, sorry. So this was after we flew on. So we flew like 3 jets on. The other 4 were back in Kadena, and they pull into port. So we have like a meeting with the ship's air department and the captain and everything. And I asked them, I was like, are you guys planning on doing this at all? Like I've read a couple hazard reports about this going on and damaging Harriers. And he's like, well, funny you should ask. We just did it like 2 weeks ago, but we did a really good job of cleaning it up, which was not true. And
you had the engines to prove it.
Yeah, all 3 engines that we flew on. So my skipper was like, "Oh, Fister, great job asking the question, but next time do it before we fly on, idiot." It's like fair.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Field
a
grade
dumb
proxy
question, skip
war.
that.
Field grade
Yeah.
proxy wars. What's that?
Oh man, yeah. So 513, there were some wild times in the nightmares in the the mid or the late aughts, I guess. We had 2 the Opso Magua. He was Magua because you've seen Last of the Mohicans, the Magua, the Indian, looked like that. Yeah, he had a haircut, looked exactly like that. And Critter, so Magua was the Opso. I worked for him. Critter was the AMO. They were both great instructors, great mentors, taught me a ton, but they were absolute savages on the JOPA. Sorry, anybody explain that? The Junior Officer Protection Agency. So basically, the captains and below in a squadron would all kind of band together to not get destroyed by the field grade. So Magua and Critter were friends, so they wouldn't fight too much, but they would like send their minions out to like battle each other. And we had another guy that worked in ops with me, Tranny. That's a whole other great story. But
oh boy,
so
Tranny,
not the best call sign anymore.
Right? Yeah, probably wouldn't fly in today's world, but the story behind it's pretty good. But anyway, so one day Magua sent Tranny down to the AMO's office to get the schedule signed off by the maintenance officer, and Critter looks at it and he's like, "What the fuck is this piece of shit? We can't do this. Like you're crazy. You know what? You should take this and punch yourself in the face with it." And he rolls it up into a ball and throws it at Tranny and like hits him in the face with it. And then he's like, "And go fuck yourself." So Tranny just stands there like deadpan and he goes, "Well, sir, would you like me to punch myself in the face first or go fuck myself first?" And then he started laughing at this guy. So, but anyway,
the funny thing about that is people all the time to this day think I'm being either blunt or rude and shit. It's like, it's the way we talk to each other.
Yeah.
We don't,
you
forget that other people.
It's life in a gun squadron.
That is life in a gun squadron. You couldn't have said it better. Yeah, I mean, and that sort of interaction has happened all over the squadron spaces at any moment in time.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. All right, so how did Tranny get his call sign?
Yeah, so when he was a student in Kingsville, you guys had read and initials back then. So anytime something would come out, like important for the pilots to know, there would be a read and initial. And if you were current on them, your little thing would be green, like a piece of paper or whatever. If you had one where they had to read before you went flying, it would be turned red and you couldn't fly until you read it and turned your thing green. Well, Tranny had like an amorous rendezvous with a girl somewhere down there in Kingsville that later her actual gender came into question.
No.
Yeah, and so his buddies, instead of being sympathetic and helping him, they decided to put that story into a read and initial.
No.
Kingsville. Yeah, at the squadron. I can't remember which one he was in.
So everybody had to read it.
Everybody had to know it. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? That is a great call sign story. Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty good.
the best part was they turned it into a read initial. There's
Yeah,
no avoiding it.
it's savage. I know.
Right?
That is truly savage.
Yeah,
That's beautiful. And yours is just a play on your name, so people that are wondering how you
yeah,
got Fister.
right. Yeah, yeah. Just nobody can spell or pronounce it, so there's
There's no
nothing
nothing
beyond
sexual
that.
going on there,
No, there's
folks.
no, no.
Nothing
No,
to see
no.
here.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, so along with the tranny call sign, so there's Vegas shenanigans with 513. Is this
Yeah,
the same
this
time period here?
same cast of characters.
Okay.
The skipper was a great. He's awesome. I'll tell you who is offline. I don't want to. He's still active duty, but so same cast of characters, and we had a K court where you had to dress up as your call sign.
Okay. Oh
And
boy.
Tranny met. I mean, his wife's awesome. Great gal. He met her like 2 days before the K court, or maybe even the day before, and he had to dress up as his call sign too. So he she lets him borrow her dress, her like leggings. He gets a wig, and he shows up in his future wife's dress after
No.
knowing her for about 48 hours.
No.
Oh, that's a special woman there.
Yeah, that's how he knew
Yeah.
he had a winner. So
Oh my gosh. And so
yeah,
wait, so was the K? Were you guys doing a deployment over to Vegas? Was the K
yeah,
court held in Vegas?
we were doing a det to Creech Air Force Base,
Oh,
which is
okay,
kind of
yeah,
a little bit north of Vegas,
yeah,
where they have a lot of the drones and stuff.
sure.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we've called it K Court, but it's short for Kangaroo Court, and I think we talked
Right.
about it way back when we were talking call signs. That's often where guys would get officially dubbed
Yeah,
with their call
exactly.
signs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had a special gavel in the Great American Bulldogs.
Oh boy, we did.
That at the time of it wasn't Me Too then, it was but it was Patsy Schroeder and
Oh yeah.
all that going tailhook, that we wound up permanently sewing the squadron's gavel into a helmet bag
Yes. So it couldn't be open.
and it was
carry it
embroidered.
around.
Yeah, you so you could carry it
Yeah.
around and not, but it was sewn in there. You couldn't even pull it out for K Court. They had to just bang the bag on the
Yeah.
deck. So if you
Yeah.
can only use your imagination as to what might be in there. And it had
Yeah.
beautiful Japanese embroidery on there with the
Yeah.
VME 223
Yeah.
Bulldogs. DOD was our gavel. So
Yeah. DOD is an acronym that we just won't mention what it stands for.
Yeah.
It does not stand for the Department of Defense. Let's just know that.
and it makes a great gavel for Kangaroo Court.
Yeah. I will say that the last D stood for death.
Yeah. I can read between the lines on that one.
Okay. Okay. This is probably not for the. This is probably not for the weak at the weak stomach or whatever. But you have a note here. Ass declared persona non grata in Palau.
Oh yeah.
I'm assuming it's some kind of food borne issue.
Ass is a call sign, not
Oh.
a foodborne issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Ass is a call sign. I
It
kind of
stands
wanted.
for air show stopper. So Ass, great dude. I deployed with him twice. He's moved on to. I think they've changed his call sign because he's more refined now, flying the F-35. But
Oh.
he was flying in the Miramar Air Show. We used to do like the level 3, but then there would also be a MAGTAF demo where they'd have some helicopters come in with
Sure.
some Marines. You'd have a Hornet and a Harrier behind a tanker. And Ass is also a local San Diego kid, so he was going to be like hometown hero,
Yeah.
flying in the local air show. Well, they had to go out and hold and get gas with the C-130. He couldn't get in the basket. So he has to declare an emergency for fuel, and he stops the whole air show. And
Air show stopper.
a
I
single
got it.
Harrier, a single Harrier taxis in. That was it.
Oh,
That was
that's
that.
not-
So, yeah. So on the 15th MEU, several years. This was in 2017. 7th Fleet, yeah, they're the Pacific Fleet, I think. 7th Fleet, they wanted us to explore landing at kind of remote island bases and, for some future plan stuff. And we had that set up where we're going to land in Palau and we're going to land in Yap, these kind of really small islands. And of course, so it's kind of set up and it's looking okay. But then, the rest of the MEU wants to really like jazz it up, instead of just it being a simple 2 Harriers land and come out just to try it. They want to do like a raid, like a heliborne raid, like
Oh, wow.
all kinds of crazy stuff. And the Palauan ambassador was like not having it. So, but Ass was already downrange, like setting this whole thing up. So he got off the ship in Hawaii, like flew to Guam, then flew to Palau. And when the ambassador found out about it, she like flipped her shit. He was confined to his hotel room and then like ejected from the country.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
They were
man.
pissed.
Ow, my ass!
Yeah.
Hey,
We got to do it on the way back because they kind of did a little more, the big Navy side did a little more diplomatic work and smoothed it out. And we scaled it back down to just Harriers and some Ospreys. So we got to do it. It was pretty cool. But yeah, that was Ass, persona non grata.
our
Nice.
Chase Cole.
Chase points it out.
He-
Yeah.
Well, did you see what he wrote?
Yeah,
So
he says, Fister, Tranny, and Ass. Quite the lineup for
That's
today's
right, yeah.
show.
this, if you took
It's almost
just
a show title. Fister, Tranny, and Ass. It's not what you think.
I'm not. You know what? That's not a bad title for this because I mean, and it is. I mean, if nobody knew what we were talking about and you just read transcripts, you're like, "What in the hell kind of podcast is this?"
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can get that up on social media, but it's a
No.
great title.
Oh, it is. It is. Okay. What's the schizo rule for your ORM worksheet?
man.
What's that about?
Yeah. I feel bad telling this one because Schizo's a great guy. And actually, it ended up not even being a mishap. So it's not that big of a deal. But
Wait. Well, the
Yeah.
story starts with, well, it ended up not being a mishap, so
It's fine.
it's all right.
So, you guys have ORM, were operational risk management worksheets back then?
Well,
You're
We
basically-
didn't worry about
yeah.
risk management.
Yeah.
We just tried not to do stupid shit.
So there were these things called operational risk management worksheets, and it was supposed to like delineate the risk level to like approval at the appropriate level. So like every little weird thing that would happen, if it was just ops normal, it would be like very low. If there was something weird like, a weather system in the area, it would go up to low. If you had something weird like you were kind of on the edge of currency, it would go to like medium.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so Schizo is like on his way to he's about to PCS to his next job. He's the XO at the time of the
PCS.
nightmares.
What's PCS stand for?
Permanent change of station. So he's going to move on to his next job.
Thank you.
He's all like pretty much checked out. He's done his last flight and everything, and he's ready to leave. Well, a C card, which is an FCF profile, pops up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, shit on. I'll take the C card." And I'm sitting in the ready room while he's out, and then I hear the radio. It's like, "Hey, you need to call Crash Fire Rescue. I think I just like balled up this BL and put the strut through the wing." And I guess what happened, he can't. So C car didn't need hovers, but you had to do a vertical landing. So he came in like for a shit hot, decel, burned all his water because when you were if you were coming in fast and had to slow down, you would bleed the motor quite a bit and you would lose performance. So
Was this
if you
in
were,
Yuma?
This was in Yuma. Yeah, this was in Yuma, like springtime. So not like dead of summer, but springtime. So
It's only
he comes
It's only
in.
105
It's only
degrees
like,
there.
yeah,
only
that's right.
100.
Yeah, it's dry heat. But he comes in, and I guess from like 30 feet down, pretty much just comes down like a rock.
Oh.
And so it made it pretty awkward because that same night we were doing like his hail and bail at the squadron bar, and it's like, all right, yeah, Schizo, you get the guy a beer. It's like, but wait, have you done your like urine and blood test yet?
Right.
Which he had. So he had a beer, and then it was like, all right, well, we'll get you your NATOPS and logbooks when the investigation's complete. But the Schizo rule became on the ORM worksheet. If you were within like 10 days of a PCS, you went up to like medium or high or
Yes.
something.
Yes.
But it ended up like they found, whatever was broken, like a strut, they found like one in the boneyard or something. And like, through some creative accounting and excellent maintenance by guys like Chase, it was
Yeah, it
put
wasn't
back
even
together. It wasn't even a class C or D. So
That's great.
yeah.
Hey, real
We had a
quick.
guy. I was a safety officer, and we had a guy who was all of a sudden we had canopies coming open, and
Oh, yeah.
several there's Class C mishap based on the
Yeah.
amount of money that it's going to cost to fix it. And one of the squadron commanders did some creative. Nope, it's not a mishap. Canopy's a consumable. Isn't expected to last the life of the aircraft. Like what? I'll have some of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
But he got away with it. It's like, holy crap! All right,
Hey,
we've all
gents-
eaten mishaps, and this guy goes, "Oh, nope, not a mishap, just a hazard report." Go, oh, brother.
I think we've covered this acronym one other time, but since it's fresh, FCF.
Yeah, FCF is functional check flight.
Thank you.
Also known as a PMCF, post maintenance check flight. So
Yeah.
And you mentioned a C card. You had different cards that you had things written on them that you had to accomplish on each of those flights,
Right.
based on A card,
Yeah.
C card.
yeah, an A card was like a full profile if it came out of heavy maintenance, and C card was like anything with flight controls.
So can I assume by the note that I'm looking at that you were successful at avoiding command and staff?
I was, yeah. So yeah, so I was at Mott's, Mott's instructor, and I got selected for command and staff. Usually they would do, and that's like professional military education, or we call it PME, kind of the steps you had to do to get promoted to the next rank and get command eventually. You could also do a correspondence course, which I had already done, but they would still want to send you to the resident school for, I guess it was considered more prestigious or whatever. But I wanted to go back and keep flying.
It would polish you. It would polish
yeah,
you up so
yeah, that's
much
right.
to go in person, right?
So I was talking to the Mott's CO about it, and he's like, well, you should just send a letter to the board and just tell them, like, hey, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to go back and fly. The fleet's short on qual. I was like, I think they'll see that, and they'll be like, yeah, no problem. Go back to the fleet. So I write this letter, and I'm like, dear members of the whatever command staff board,
Please don't pick me.
For career progression, I require a department head tour, which is basically being like an operations officer, maintenance officer, or executive officer. The fleet is very short on flight leadership qualifications, and I have I had pretty much every qual there was. So I'm like, all right. So I send it in, and then I get a call a couple weeks later after the board met, and it's Twitch, another Harrier guy he was I think 2 COs ahead of me at 203, and he calls me. He was on the command and staff board, and he's like, hey, Fister, we all liked your letter about how fucking great you are and how much everybody needs you. Congrats, you're going to command and staff.
Oh, you're going.
So yeah, you're going. So I was like, oh shit. So I think I'm going, but that year, for some reason, they usually would select primaries and alternates. That year they just over selected primaries, and Fokker was a Harrier guy, and he was the fixed wing monitor. And I kind of pled my case to him, and he's like, yeah, you need a department head tour, and you need to go back to the fleet. So I'm going to take you off the list and cut your orders back to Yuma or to the fleet in Yuma. So
Nice.
Well,
Nicely
well,
done.
Yeah, well done, sir.
yeah.
I had a feeling it was going to go the other way, but well
yeah,
done.
yeah, it almost did.
Well, and it,
no
and it
kidding.
worked. I mean, obviously, you filled all the
right.
squares, and you were sought after, or not sought after. You were respected enough to get a squadron command. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was
absolutely.
pretty.
Well, we've
pretty
been going
fortunate.
a little over an hour and 20 already. So what I want to do, let's talk a little bit about 203 and wind it up in there, I guess. So when it turns out, I'll tell it here. I'm assuming you retired coming out of 203. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah, I had about
Yeah, okay.
6 months after I gave up command to till I could retire, till I go on terminal leave.
We get your
But yeah,
affairs in
basically,
order and going. Okay.
right. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So you were the last commanding officer of VMAT 203, which is where newly winged pilots and pilots transitioning from other aircraft go to learn to fly the Harrier. And I know that squadron COs wake up in the middle of the night sweating, going, "Oh God, what's going to happen today?" And I imagine you woke up twice a night because you're turning out loose new guys in this airplane.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a few days like that for sure. I mean, overall it was awesome. I had a great group of IPs that I, let them do their thing, or at least I think I let them do their thing. I tried to treat them how I enjoyed being, treated when I was a instructor in the fleet or whatever. But there was a few days. There was on one of the Yuma debts, we had like back to back Class Charlie mishaps. Like an Italian student had a high speed departure and ripped off a pylon, and like
Oof.
the pylon cadam, I think it was a instrumentation pod had came off. And then the next day, we were just talking about canopies. Actually, this one I think there was a bird strike. So these guys hit like a pterodactyl out in the 2301 doing lat. So we've got like
Right.
back to back Class C mishaps. So we're like, all right, I mean, there's not really doing it. I mean, obviously the guy mishandled the airplane, but we had checked the bird strike forecast and everything. So it wasn't anything really we were doing that was wrong. So we kept going. And like the next day when we didn't have a mishap, I was like, all right. It's like now I see why like at the end of the stock exchange every day, everyone's clapping even when it's a shitty day for the market.
Like,
They're just
thank
happy
God it's over.
Yeah. This thing didn't come off the rails.
We made it. Oh man.
Yeah. But most days were really good. It was a great tour, huge honor.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome tour overall.
Another one I don't know if we've ever covered, but departed the aircraft, meaning he didn't depart the aircraft as in he ejected and left it behind. The aircraft has departed controlled flight. So
so the Harrier had some
term
really
is.
nasty high-speed flight characteristics too, and it was prone to high-speed adverse yaw departures, which caused a lot of mishaps over the years. But
Yeah. It would rub the engine casing and all kinds of nasty stuff. So
yeah.
Hey, speaking of mishaps, I don't think this. Did you ever have your hand on the ejection handle?
No, I was pretty lucky. I never really even. I mean, that Iwakuni one was probably about as close as I think I got to thinking
Good.
about it. But yeah, I had a pretty good run. I ended up with like a little over 2,600 hours, and never felt like I was in a really, really bad spot.
Well done, sir. Well done.
nicely done. Oh, and Chase tells us about your last flight in the water cannon salute.
Yeah, that was pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was,
so they all often say the pilot's last flight has fire trucks shooting water over his aircraft, and it's either a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I kind of got two last flights because I actually flew the last 203 flight ever, like of a 203 jet, and then I got to 223 was gracious enough to give me a last flight when I was just kind of bumming around the mag waiting to retire.
Okay.
So
Yeah, he's telling me that they misaligned the fire trucks and wound up soaking all the Marines sitting there waiting for the ceremony.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Marines helping Marines.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh, that's hilarious. So, Big, I think I heard you ask the question about the ejection handle.
Yeah.
Did you say you ever have your hand on the handle?
Yeah,
I missed the
he
answer.
said- no, he said no. The oil light in Iwakuni was like the worst.
Okay.
The worst situation. So that's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's a good career.
Yeah.
That is a good career because there are guys out there who have shelled 3 of those bad boys. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I know. I know it's hard. Yeah, and by the way, they're 2 inches shorter than they used to be.
That's right.
Before they
I don't
started.
have much to spare, so.
Hey, speaking of that, did you? How's your neck and your back from all the flying?
They hurt, especially 203 doing doing a lot of BFM. I flew with 401 for a couple of years too, and they have five. So
Oh yeah.
did a lot of BFM. It's
Basic
not as
fighter
bad now that
maneuvering.
basic fighter maneuvering. So a lot of turning and looking under a lot of G's.
Boy,
So those
don't
kind
I
of hurt,
know it.
but yeah, but not not too bad.
Excellent.
Awesome.
What do you think? Should we wrap this thing up? Because
I think we
we've
need to
taken a
land
lot
this
of his
airplane.
time.
Yeah, we are indeed. But these are great stories.
No,
Oh.
yes. So, hey, first of all, Fister, thank you for your service, and thank
your
you for
service,
sharing.
indeed.
You're a very humble guy. I don't have any stories, and yeah, you actually have great stories. And the thing is, we're going to shut the microphones off, and you're going to start telling more stories, right? And that's just how it goes. So anyway. Should we wrap this thing up?
I think
Repeat?
we should. I think we should. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your service, and hopefully you'll come back. I'm sure you've got more to
Yeah.
tell. We'll
Yes,
think of them as it goes here.
Yeah, an hour from now, you're going to go, oh, why didn't
Oh, yeah.
I think about that?
So write 'em
So
down
when you
and
do
get
have
back
that
to us.
moment, yeah, make them a little bullet
Okay.
note,
Yeah.
and we'll collect them and we'll have you back. And also,
Awesome, guys.
next time you're sitting in the cockpit at work and you're just talking like we do, and somebody tells a story, go, hey, you need to tell this story to Fig and Repeat, because that's a good one, right?
Yeah, I got to be careful at my. I think most of these stories wouldn't do well in our current line of work, depending on
Right. Yeah.
who
Well,
you're-
you got
who you're
to
sharing
know
the
your
flight.
audience, right?
Read your
you got to
audience,
know your
that's
audience.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
you go. Exactly. So, all right.
Well, thanks, guys.
Well,
It's awesome.
thank you. Yeah, you bet. And we're glad you came and spent some time with us. We also need to thank some other folks here today.
Yeah.
We'll start off by thanking the folks over at Backbeat Media who handle all our advertising for us. We really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Thanks, Dave Hamilton.
Yeah.
Dave Hamilton.
That's
He's the
his
man.
company.
He also has the Mac Geek Gab and the Gig Gab business.
That's for
brand.
musicians. Yep.
Yeah.
And the
Oh, you know,
business
I
brand
never put
said,
that
yeah.
together for Gig Gab.
Yeah.
For
Dave's
musicians.
a drummer. Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go. Yeah. So
just learned
we've
something
mentioned
new.
his name several times during this show, but Chase Cole, thank you for running the Facebook group over there. You're a huge help with that. Thank you to Styx, who is kind of a producer for us, does a lot of behind the scenes checking up and working on things. And another huge thank you to Chucker. He is our second. Last week we mentioned Sal Marinello is our double tanker aircraft commander. And Chucker stepped up and with a huge donation again. So he is now a double tanker aircraft commander. So thank you so much. God bless you. We appreciate that. And he's put us in touch with a couple more Vietnam era vets. I think we're going to wind up getting on the show. So looking forward to talking to some of these folks. One of them was on the I just went
Forrestal,
blank
right?
on the carrier.
Forrestal.
Forrestal, the fire on the Forrestal
Yeah.
in Vietnam. So he was there and is on that video. So we're going to be chatting with that gent.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And don't forget, we have a merch store. You know, if you want to get that bikini for your girlfriend or your wife or both, it's go to sothereiwas.us/merch. And hey, we got hats, we got koozies, we got coffee mugs, we got what else? Bikinis,
Shot
towels,
glasses.
shot glasses, whatever.
Shirts, polo shirts, T-shirts, and there was a request to get a hoodie up there. I'm going to see if we can get a hoodie going.
Right.
So, winter's coming up. So, yeah. I'm playing around with it. Just I may or may not be able to do it, but I think I've got a way to get a quiz up on our website. So you can go in there and play around with learning seeing how much you retained from either the glossary or listening to the shows. So there's some good stuff there. I'm probably going to set it up so you have to be logged in to do the quiz. Right now I've got 2 aircraft carrier-based operations questions up there, but we'll find a bunch of other questions from the shows that'll be worth putting up there and
might
have some
learn
fun with that, Yeah, right? I know I did just by writing the questions. So,
Awesome. Oh, I know who that is.
those guys, yeah.
Those are the two Air Force F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good. That's the Dos Gringos. Thank you to the Dos Gringos for letting us use their music. Dos Gringos.
Gringos. And their backup band, when those guys aren't there, the backup band calls themselves Los Gringos. So it's just the Gringos.
Sure.
So, yeah. Fig mentioned the glossary, and, that's about it. I don't know. Do you have any advice for everybody until we get back together next week, Fig?
Well, don't sit on the ejection seat handle.
Don't do it. Stay safe and check 6.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
What'd he say?
He said it's over.
Picked the wrong week. Quit sniffing glue.
Oh, jeez.
And we're out. I figured that was a good close. I didn't get to that button in time when you talked about the guy huffing paint and running into a Harrier. I needed that soundbite there. Maybe I'll go back and stick it in.
Yeah, I can't. That was crazy.
Hey, that was fun, Fister. Thank you for all the stories.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys. That was great.
Fantabulous.
Yeah.
Fantabulous. All right.
Is this episode 75?
74.
74. You're episode 74, bro.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Then we got our, what's 75? Diamond anniversary? I don't know. It's Diamond Show.
Yeah.
Send us diamonds, folks.
Yeah. Sorry about the heavy breathing early on in the show. Hopefully it doesn't screw with it too bad.
You know what? I've learned to. I am. I don't know if you hyphenate anal retentive. I'm anal retentive about the sound because I know I don't want to turn people off with the clicking and stuff. That was terrible. We couldn't have recorded, but
it was perfect once you put the ear pod.
That worked great. So,
okay, cool.
But yeah, and I've also learned that, you know what, people are listening to this show for the entertainment value, and they for the most part they're pretty understanding about the fact that we're doing a lot of remote across the internet audio here. So so it works out well. So thank you, Sticks. He says Diamond Jubilee and is the 75th, and he congratulates us on a great show. And terracotta neem tree. Anyway, he's made a bunch of comments during the show, which you can go and read on YouTube. I'm not going to try and go back and bore everybody by reading them all now, but they're all there on YouTube, and we've had as many as about 25 watching live at any given time, so that's good. And last time I checked, we're cranking better than 16,000 people a month listening to the show. So we forgot to tell people to share it, but if you're watching it here, go share the show.
Yeah, share the show. Share the show.
Yeah. So this is fun. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
you guys do an awesome job.
Well, thank you. Like I said, we felt bass backwards into it. Like, hey, we got to do this. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, we've got something really good here that we put, we touched the third rail and didn't get shocked. We got it.
Yeah.
We found gold.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is cool. So.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, I know you guys want to go watch some foosball. Oh,
yeah.
football.
Hey, do you want to record an intro?
Yeah, we
intro?
can do that. Yeah, let's say goodbye to everybody there on the YouTube and Facebook and Rumble. And Fig and I will record the intro to this, and we'll see you on the podcatchers. So take care, everybody.
See you, Fister.
Stay safe.
Okay. Take care, guys. Thanks. Okay.
Peace.
See ya.
So long.